Hello and welcome to ZED Talks. I am joined today with somebody who's on the other side of the world to me. So it's 8 a.m. at the time of recording this, and it's 8 p.m. where my guest, Terry McCaul, is. Now, Terry's going to tell you all about Terry. I've got so many questions that I want to ask Terry, who has a lifetime of experience, which we're going to unpack some of that in the next 40 to 50 minutes. So hi Terry, welcome to ZED Talks. Thank you so much for being here. Tell us about you.
Kia ora Zoe. Look, I'm delighted to be here, and just in a very short time I'll try to introduce myself. Having a 50-year career, I have been in something like 14 different organisations over the last 50 years, where most of my work has been in the development of organisational change, organisational culture development, leadership, and a transformation really of the sectors, if you like. So I've been across the private sector and I've been across the public sector. Most of the roles have been at an executive level. I fell into HR as a part of change, and most recently, last year in fact, I published a book to try and wrap up a lot of the learnings and hopefully wisdom that I had in being in the arena, rather than research papers and reading what academics might have put out there. Having been in the arena gives you a little bit of a different twist on what you learn. So I've put it together in a little bit of a book, and I think we're going to touch on that a little bit today. But my life really has been about trying to make excellent organisations, and mostly in New Zealand. I have spent a little bit of time in Australia. I've spent some time working with the UN. I did a couple of speeches to the UN and ECE, so I have travelled over into Europe and had a look at what business does over there. So I've been at the sort of forefront of change and transformation for some time here in New Zealand, and I think I've got something to share with people.
That's amazing. I feel always in awe of people that have a lifetime of being in one specific kind of, maybe it's not one specific, but a very directive place, like as in you've just said, you know, your lifetime has been around driving excellent or creating excellent organisations, which is amazing. So thank you for your service. Thank you for doing that, because it's a thankless job. I know we get paid to do jobs, but I think being at the helm of people and leadership is not an easy task, and it's certainly not easy now. There's so many questions I have. I'm going to start off with, and we're going to come to the book. The Triple Knot is the book. And for anyone listening, of course, you know the description will have all about Terry, how you can get hands on the book, and we're going to unpack a little bit what you can expect from the book. Terry, define for me what you believe is an excellent organisation.
Oh, wow. It's a pretty big question. I think if you'd asked me that question in the 90s, the answer might have been different from what it is today, because organizations, I think, that are truly excellent would be organizations that have the ability to adapt and change as the world around them shifts as well. Sadly, we've seen lots of organizations who were very, very good at what they did, had very strong cultures, all of those sorts of things, but couldn't do that one thing and adapt to what the rest of the world is doing, and that's society more than anything else. So an excellent organization is one that's able to adapt, it's in its DNA, and sustain itself in that way. I think the measures of an excellent organization have shifted, and I think we're actually at a point at the moment where we're really struggling to understand what those measures might be, and how we do define that. But for me, it comes down to simple things like, I want to be there. It's somewhere I want to be, that I want to be doing what I'm doing, what I'm good at doing, and what other people are doing as well. And when you look around the organization, you see other people feel the same. To me, that's an excellent organization, but it's also productive. There's no point in being an organization that everybody's happy and nobody produces. I've been in that, actually. Once upon a time, it was called the New Zealand Post Office, many years ago. If anybody asked me in a survey, are you happy with your work, I would say, absolutely, don't change a thing. Were we productive? Absolutely not. We were terrible. It would take 4 weeks to get a telephone put into your place, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think you've touched on quite a few things there, and I'm sure that over your span of your career, you have seen trends that have, like you've just alluded to, an excellent organisation at different points of time and different stages and phases. That looks quite differently, but the one thing that you've kind of honed on is this readiness to change, or this ability to adapt and keep doing that. There's only very few organisations that I've seen this happen over and over again, and they reinvent themselves, they adapt, they change, and they kind of reinitiate themselves. I think Volvo has been one of those as a car brand. Marks and Spencer's in the UK, I don't even know if Marks and Spencer's have got any presence anywhere else, but in the UK they're an apparel and food brand, amongst other things, and they seem to have this ability to reinvent, and they have done, and it's made them really relevant and still very much. I don't know many organisations that have done that so visibly, and I think that we are in a very, very pivotal moment, because of where our technology is leading us. So I'd love your view on what you've seen as the trends over the, and maybe those trends. So for me in HR, they have been, somebody like you comes and hires me and says, can you help me, X, Y, Z? And of course I say, yep, no problem. And then what's happened over my 30-year career is, Zoe, can you centralise? And then I go somewhere else and they want to decentralise. And then I go somewhere else and they want to centralise. And then they want to decentralise. Like, that's my trend in my whole tenure in HR. That's what I've been tasked to do. Have you had some similarities in the jobs that you've had, or over the years, what you've seen on reflection?
Look, I've probably seen the same sort of thing. There's cycles of and governments do it as well. We're going through one at the moment where the government is sort of decentralising, where the last government before that was centralising. So we tried to copy the National Health Service, for instance, and we made a big mess of it. So we've split that quite a bit. So it reflects what's going on in society into the organisation as well. But one of the things that I have really noticed, and particularly within the HR field, because I came into HR from total quality management, actually. You might have heard of Deming. So I was the CEO of the Deming Institute at one stage here in New Zealand. And things like performance appraisal, which at the time I came into HR, was huge. Everybody was saying you've got to have performance appraisal and performance management systems and whatnot. Yet one of the principles of total quality management was to drive fear out of the workplace. One thing I discovered was that HR were quite insular and wouldn't accept sort of advice coming from other parts of the business. And I think we went through a period where actually that changed, and HR started to listen a lot more to what was going on in the business, and the sort of saying that, hello, I'm from HR and I'm here to help you, stopped for a wee while. To be honest, I'm feeling it's gone a little bit back that way at the moment, possibly because we seem to be in crisis mode an awful lot more in business, certainly in New Zealand, and I think we reflect what goes on in the rest of the world. But I think that's one of the biggest things, is that you went along with what was going on, as opposed to somebody stepping out and going, hang on, maybe we can learn from something else. And you mentioned earlier on excellent organisations. We have on our doorstep probably one of the best organisations that the world has ever seen. If you're a rugby supporter, of course, you'll understand it. It's the All Blacks, and we've had a bit of a horrible season, as I can imagine England probably has had the odds ups and downs as well. But we're confident that the All Blacks will reinvent themselves, because it is inbuilt, it's in the DNA somehow. And that's the sort of thing that no matter how many HR policies and practices and things that you put in place, you can't replicate easy. But we are starting to learn that actually we can pick up ideas from things like sports and bring them into business. because we blocked that for many, many years. I don't know if that really answers your question, but
Yeah.
I feel very passionate about that ability to learn from other places.
No, I think that there's a lot again, the conversation we're having, there's so much gold in many avenues that we could take the conversation as well. And I'm going to pick up on a couple of things, which is, and I've got a question to ask you about, if you hired a HR leader today, what would that actually, let's start there. If you hired a HR leader today, what would they need to have to withstand that excellent kind of org vision that you have, and want to instill? And what do they need to what do they need to have for you to hire them? I'm curious.
I think the ability to critically reason. I see a lot of HR practices and policies that are quite popular at the moment. They don't really, to me, seem to have a lot of basis in fact or research or evidence or whatever. And I would really value an HR person who doesn't come with the answers, but comes with the questions and says, well, why would we want to do that? Simply because Google do it or whatever, doesn't mean it will work for us. And is it something that actually has been researched? And it's one of my hot buttons actually at the moment, and I've been a little critical on LinkedIn of HR, and I've been open about that, because I do see a lot of what I call lazy HR, where people are just following a fashion, or appears that way, and not really thinking through the impacts of the solutions that they're suggesting. So I think I would be looking for an HR person that's actually got more ears than ideas, and listens and learns and understands the nature of the game before suggesting, oh look, we did this when I was at Coca-Cola, so I'm going to do that here at this new organisation, with the view that it will work there as well, because it might well not, probably won't.
Yeah. So as an ex-chief people officer, I'm going to probably prickle a few people with what I'm about to say, so trigger warning. HR people, including myself, have come from a place of defence, because we've always had to justify why we're here, and that
Absolutely.
has led, why that happens is because lots of HR leaders are very egotistical, and they won't listen because they think they know best. We can say that about a lot of people, so I am generalising, but that's a trend that I see now more than ever. And I've been in that camp, so I'm not excusing myself for that. And I've come from a place of supply. It's a brilliant idea, let's do it. Exactly to the point that you've said. So where's the demand? There is no demand, because the rub is you've been hired to do something, you're under pressure to deliver, so you come up with these ideas that you think are going to fix it without talking to the business, without understanding truly and deeply what the business strategy is, because HR is often left out of that. Why? Because they're not thought of to be at that table at that time, because there's not much relevance, or because people don't think there is this critical thinking. They're not involved. They have to earn that place to be there. And so this behaviour hasn't earned them there, because number one, they don't listen often. Number two is because I know this way, we're doing it this way because I've done it here before and it worked. And then that is that complacency around, well, we're going to do what we've always done and label it as being very creative. So that brings a little bit of a circle and vacuum to then kind of defending position, because it's always been, well, I've delivered all of these things. Yeah, well, it isn't what the business needs or wants. There is no HR strategy. There's a business strategy that has components of people, processes within it. I've always said there's no separate people agenda. People are the business, and it's inside it. It's not separate. So I think that in itself, there's a bit prima donna-ish, because we've got our own strategy. So I completely agree with you. And I'm chuckling because inside, because there's a lot of noise if you're on LinkedIn, and I see that you're quite active, around the desirable skills for a CPO in 2026. And I'm going to go bullshit on it. I don't believe in some of the things that they're saying. I believe in be a business leader, understand the business, have the critical rationale, have the research, know and understand deeply what the pain points are, what you're trying to achieve as a business, and then be able to speak to that. So I'll get off my soapbox now, because I feel really passionate about this too. But I agree with you. I think that there's this need to sit back, two ears, one mouth, sit back, observe. Sometimes it's not what's being said either. There's sometimes, certainly in different cultures, you go to Japan, it's all about what's not being spoken about. And we will work in a multicultural way now. And when we're online, we can't say that we're in one geography. We could be accessed anywhere in the world. There's a lot to be said for developing. Yes, there's research, and yes, there's academia, and yes, there's all of these things. But there's also a sense when you're a well-seasoned professional, you do have a sense, and we should also take that into consideration about behaviour and subtle behaviour of what's happening in the culture, which often is really dampened because we're under such time pressure. So it's just quick, let's go. I always say you've always got enough time for everything that's important. So take a pause, sit back, push back if you need to, gain yourself space and time so that you can come with that authority, come with that credibility to be worthy of that place where people say, actually, you asked some great questions. We need that at the beginning. I wish we'd had that at the beginning. There's the invitation. There we go. So I'm with you. I think that there's anyone listening to this that is a CPO or wants to be a CPO, I think that these are skills that you are going to have non-negotiable in the coming years. To lead a people organisation, you're going to have to do things that you've never done before, and that's also understand sales and understand marketing, because this traditionally is not something that HR people have to worry about. Revenue generation or getting and acquiring clients and keeping them. Anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. I've had a rant long enough. But I concur, Terry. I concur.
I think that we're probably in violent agreement on a lot of things, to be honest. And your soapbox is probably the same soapbox as mine. And because I've had the opportunity to be in the arena, I've been a salesperson, I've been a project manager, I've been a CEO, I've been in charge of IT and finance and procurement and all of these things. And I know the challenges that people have. Because first and foremost, I guess I saw my role as talking to people and understanding their world. And seeing what can I do to help them do that. For me, that's good HR. Not going and telling people that we're going to run another staff survey, because generally, people have got a kind of a goldfish memory, and they go, "Well, I didn't get my salary increase 4 weeks ago, so I'm going to give it to them. I'm going to tell them all the bad things." And they don't always feel like that. They only feel like that for a period. So I look at those things quite leerily, but I think there has been a little bit of a shift in really strategic thinking HR people, because the natural empathy that actually I think does come with the job once you're into those senior roles starts to make you question the accepted dogma that people kind of generate out there. And there's lots of consultants. It's a huge industry, the HR industry, really. Trying to sell you the answer, the solution to your performance issues, when actually, the ability to do nothing and listen and then see what will work here might be simpler. It might just be having a conversation with one or two people. And I think that comes only with practice. And my soapbox at the moment is to stop throwing away our experience for people who come in with the newest and the latest idea. Look for the people who are going to criticize it, and look for the reasons why they're criticizing it, because they're probably founded in some fact. And I think that's going to be a real skill that is to be sought after in organizations. But to back up a little bit, to be fair, I think we're going through a crisis of leadership in everything. I mean, you only got to look at world governments at the moment, and I don't think anybody feels that their government and their country is particularly perfect. And there appears to be a lack of integrity. There's a self-serving kind of leadership thing that's going on, and it's fallen into organizations as well. So it feels like we're being a little bit led by ideologues, both from HR and the CE space, who aren't thinking it right through to its potential possibilities. And that longer term view, and I've really only begun to understand that as I've gotten older, and because I came in all starry-eyed and doing all of the things that everybody else did, but you get worn down, and as you get a little bit wiser and more knowledgeable, you can see a little bit beyond and see what the possibilities might be, and that's the skills that we really need to encourage. But again, I'm sort of back onto your soapbox as well, because it's the same soapbox. So maybe we should move on for the audience.
Terry, it's a good soapbox. I enjoy it. Yeah. Well, so a couple of things I wrote down. So I'm full on writing mode at the moment, and because I'm also worried about I have a big concern that I use AI all the time for everything, because I guess my world demands it. Most people don't ask me why I work in AI, and there's a real reason for it. So I'll just tell you very quickly, because it makes a lot of sense maybe why I'm so curious about these things. I believe the human spirit is something which is beyond any physical time here on earth. Not everyone will share that viewpoint. I believe the spirit is long, it has a longevity. I don't know where it starts, where it ends. I've no idea that. But I believe that we need to be really conscious about our choices and our decisions through our lifetime. But aging, all the things that we may have a human life here. We have an earth suit, and I do believe that we are very wise beyond this human life, and often we don't tap into that wisdom, we don't use it, and that is that we are the most intelligent. So we talk about human intelligence, we've got then artificial intelligence, and when we combine these, we're going towards super intelligence. But one thing that we mustn't forget in all of that is the human spirit, and how intelligent that is in all senses. Somatic, we've got sensory, that's what robots can't do. They're not sensitive to empathy, compassion. Yes, they can be. I mean, over time, that's where we're heading. I don't know that we're too far away from, what we might call transhumanism. Maybe it's here, I'm not sure. Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. The reason why I'm very passionate about AI is because everything's got a duality, everything's got a good side and a not so good side. That's the cause and effect that we live in. And I think about Victor Frankenstein, the story of Victor Frankenstein, the scientist who goes away and over time becomes very obsessed about building this thing, the monster. And he cuts everybody off because he doesn't want to listen to critique. He doesn't want to be told what to do. He's very narrow-minded. He's just blinkered on creating the monster. He creates the monster, and the monster does what? Kills the only thing that Victor really cares about, his wife Elizabeth. And it's only at that point that he puts his head in his hands, he says, "What have I done?" And he can't reverse it at this point. And I kind of feel a responsibility with AI that in the wrong hands, without the right guardrails, we are creating monsters, and the potential to do that. So why I lead a lot in AI is to prevent that from happening, so it preserves the human spirit. So it's not that I am I love technology, but I believe that we need to live in harmony with it, not in fear of it, and not superior of it or it's superior to us. So that's why I work with AI, because I know that if I'm building it and I'm leading it, then it's done in a sustainable way, and a way which allows the human spirit to flourish. So that's why I do. Most people probably don't know that, and they just think, oh, why AI? You've jumped on a bandwagon. No, I'm here to preserve the human spirit. So, and I think that shows up in different ways for many people. But I'm very passionate about the next generation. They're not going to have the critical thinking that are coming into the workplace. So Gen Z is already here, but Alpha, I'm a bit worried that those critical skills will, everything will be left to AI to think, to feel. It worries me. So I'm not going to be here in probably 20 years, but I want to leave this earth a little bit, in a bit more preserved way, especially within HR. How can I help them to inspire them, give them the maybe flicker of inspiration that says, I'm going to carry on this good work. So which is going to bring me to your book. So all that said, I'd love to know about the triple knot. So as I was looking at your book, which I haven't read yet, I admitted that before we started recording, And from what I gather and understand, this is about designing and leading sustainable, high performance and organisations. I'd love to know about where did this book come from? What was your inspiration, and what led you to write this book? Because it's a really big deal to write a book. And I mean, anyone can do it, but most people don't.
Yeah, look, it took me a long time, longer than I thought it should, to actually do it. In the end, when I sat in front of the keyboard and started, it took me 6 months, which isn't long really at all. But it was about 6 years ago, no, possibly 7 years ago now, that I was a senior executive in the public sector here in New Zealand at the time, and as such, they put you through a thing called the career board. It's to try and develop the CEOs of the future. So I'm like 60 years old, and I'm going to see a psychologist, and we're going through all sorts of little tests. They even had a little room where a person came in and there was a situation and I had to deal with it, and they were watching through the one-way mirror or the two-way mirror or whatever, and all of this sort of thing. And then they asked you, what do you want to be in a few years? And well, I didn't want to be a CEO. I'd already done that and I wasn't interested. And in talking, they said, actually, you've got such a broad set of experiences that normal people, or people in the public sector, don't normally have. They grow up in Treasury or in the State Services Commission or whatever it might be, internal affairs or whatever, and all they know is the public sector. But I didn't. And could you perhaps think of writing your life experiences as a senior executive to help the development of executives in the public sector? And I thought, oh, yeah, whatever. But it ended up in me sitting and really thinking of what's the critical stuff that I have actually learned. Because, a story of, well, I did this on this day and I fell over and I broke my arm or whatever, is not really what they wanted. And when I pulled it together, I thought, actually, what we've been doing in business and in running organizations is making them as complicated and as complex as we possibly can, because that's how we measure progress. And I remembered Tor Heyerdahl. Do you remember Tor Heyerdahl, the Kon-Tiki expedition? You might be a little young for it, but
I know the Kon-Tiki. So the Kon-Tiki expedition, yes, that's ringing bells.
So he actually coined that little phrase that man measures progress by how more complex they can make the world. And I thought, well, how do we simplify the world and make it really clear so that people in organizations, at the top of organizations, can actually see clearly where they're going, and etc. So I took all of my learnings and put it into a book. Now the book is different because it is actually a novel. So I've written it in the form of a novel. The anecdotes in the novel, so there's a business that's not doing too well, and the boss is a new boss and he's trying to make it work, and there's a fraud going on. There's a little bit of romance in there as well. You have to make it interesting for people. And he starts talking to a couple of older guys that have come from the HR world and the kind of the leadership world, if you like, so the people empathy world. And they start looking at a modern organization, because all of our organizations are built along two lines, military or religious, basically, for centuries. That's what they've been built, hierarchies and structures. We're at a point where it is unprecedented in terms of the world of work. So much more driven by societal demands and sort of social conscience and all of those sorts of things than it used to be. So we can't continue to design our organizations that way and expect them to work. So I mentioned earlier on, what does a high performance organization look like? So I've postulated in this novel what an organization might look like and simplified how you could design it. The term sustainability, for instance, I've worked in science organizations that were looking at sustainability, and one in particular here was the government science organization that was responsible for building government policies around the ecology and all of that. So So I've broken sustainability into three things. There's financial sustainability, because you can't do business if you don't have the money. There's also the workforce sustainability. So you've got to have people with the right capabilities and the right tools and the right knowledge. And if you don't keep that going, so you mentioned AI, if we have a lot of people who don't know how to use AI in the future, and we're not building that capability and we're not using that capability, somebody else is going to eat their lunch. It's that simple. So that sustainability of the workforce is really important to focus on. But the last one is the new one, and that's the sustainability of your stakeholders. So meeting the needs of the society that's around you. For public sector, that's really quite simple. It's the public. For Coca-Cola have had to reinvent a lot of what they're doing because sugar, sweeteners, all of those sorts of things, but they're desperately looking for something that could keep them in business, making their money, but actually meets the needs of a much more aware, health-wise society than there was 20, 30 years ago. So sustainability has three aspects to it, and an organization needs to make sure that it's looking at how are we doing in those three spaces. Does that make some? So that's one of the things. So the book postulates that there are four areas. One's sustainability, the other is culture, another one is the workplace design, and the last one is the employment proposition. So what are you saying to people who you want to do stuff for you, whether they're an employee, a contractor, or a supplier, or whatever? Why do they want to do business with you, as opposed to people down the road? And what's in it for them, sort of thing. So I've heard people talk about the employment proposition as being, for generation baby boomers, for instance, it's this. For Gen Z, it's this. Actually, I don't think it is. I think we've got to go deeper. I think we've got to understand that there are lots of people my age, for instance, who have remortgaged to be able to help their children buy properties and things. So don't just assume that I want to do what other baby boomers are doing. I want money, right? If I'm paying that off, paying my mortgage off in mid-60s. I'm not, by the way. So it means HR has to shift its information gathering to understand individual employees, drivers, and needs. So that's the individual employment proposition. The organization employment proposition is, do I want to do what I do in that organization? Do I want to work for an arms manufacturer, for instance? Probably not. So that's the organization value proposition. So that's two, the individual value proposition and the organization value proposition. The last one with that is the vocational value proposition. So I want to be an HR person, I want to be a finance person, I want to be in an IT world. How do we tap into those things to excite people as well? So we've got to become a lot more sophisticated in the value proposition world. So that's sustainability and the value proposition. Culture is always critical. Everybody sees culture is critical, and I've spent so many years, so many days in my life trying to work through this with organizations. And I do think it comes to three things. One is, yes, your culture has to be strong, so you can see that it's believed in the organization, you can see people behaving in certain ways. But strong by itself is no good. It's also going to be strategically appropriate to your culture, to your business. Somebody in the public sector, for instance, shouldn't really operate like a fly by the seat of your pants advertising agency. That's just not going to do it. But the last one is that adaptability. How adaptive is your culture, and how do you make that happen? So again, what are your measures of it, and how do you incorporate those things? So that's all the sustaining the organization. But the one for me right now that we need to focus on more than any is the workplace design. One of my last roles, I was the Deputy Chief Executive at Stats New Zealand, and we had an earthquake in 2016. Our building fell over. Thankfully it was midnight, not 12 o'clock during the day, otherwise it would have been a worse story. But for years we didn't have a building. So I was what we call the senior responsible officer, responsible for making us a new building. So we decided we'd go state of the art. So we put up not just a really cool building, but an unbelievable work environment that was the principles that we used incorporated neurodivergent thinking. We didn't build one workplace, we built three. We built the physical workplace, we built a digital workplace. Not only could you work from anywhere, which we know people do, but it was safe to work in it. So you didn't go in thinking, I'm going to be hacked, or all of this sort of stuff. So we made sure of it. And the last one was the psychological workspace. So we whole wellness, health and safety, the person in charge of that was focused on those three workspaces. So that's what the triple knot suggests, is those four things: sustainability, culture, the workplace design, and the employment proposition. And if you can focus on those, and there are three things in each of them, that's why the triple knot, sort of like St. Patrick and the Shamrock actually, then you can really simplify looking at, well, if I do this in this space, what's the impact going to be in this? And the executive team needs to learn to talk about relationships between decisions. So if I decide to put in an IT system that does X, what's that going to mean in the physical or the psychological or the digital workspace? And what's it going to mean for sustainability as looked at by our stakeholders, the public of New Zealand? It's going to cost a lot of money and stuff like this. So it means a different conversation at the top table. So to design an organization deliberately like that means you've got to get lots of information, have lots of conversations, high involvement with employees, huge involvement with employees, and then kind of go from there, I guess. And that's really what the book does, and but it does it in a human conversation. So lots of conversations between consultant, HR manager, CEO, and so on and so forth. Sorry, that was a bit long, but
no, that's wonderful. It's wonderful. When did you launch this book? When did you publish?
I published it last year. I want to say July, I think, and because I published it just on Amazon and everything, I self-published. I learned an awful lot about the value of a publisher, because you've got to be the salesperson, the marketer, and everything.
Oh my goodness, yes, yeah.
So what I've been doing actually is spending more time talking to like MBA classes and chambers of commerce about these concepts, because it's, for me, the book's incidental actually. This is it, by the way, and yeah, you can get it in paperback, and you can get it on Kindle, you can get it on Kobo, that's all good. But it's more getting people to think a little differently and deliberately about the design, and not just their area. It's getting the executive team to be much more collaborative and things like that. So I launched the book then. It seems to be going okay. I guess if there was an agent involved, it would go much better. But at the moment, it's me.
Oh, I don't know. Traditional publishing has really changed. I think that like anyone can do a book these days. How many people do it? Because it requires discipline. It takes quite a lot of. No, it doesn't take a lot of. It takes dedication. It takes structure, and getting it up onto Amazon itself is just a task. So I kind of totally relate to that. It sounds a great book, and I want to read it because there's a couple of things that come to my mind. And this is purely, I'm going to be really selfish for a moment, because as I'm, people ask me, why are you doing a doctorate? Why are you doing a PhD? I don't really care about being Dr. Zoe. That doesn't float my boat. But what does float my boat is understanding what to design. So there's two things that I come to my mind about your book, because I can't wait to read it now. And I can take a break from academic books right now. That's what I'll need to do, because my brain is on fire with every Friday I kind of have a delivery to study. Anyway, I digress. There's two things that come to my mind. if anyone's ever heard of the Inner Development Goals. So they're a non-for-profit organisation. They do a lot of research on sort of how to build or how to make systemic change, how to build something which can help take our businesses, our people forward. And they, if you were to read it, if you have read it, or anyone wants to know about it, innerdevelopmentgoals.org, they have a model, and it looks a bit like a hierarchy of needs, Maslow's work, because they talk about 5 distinct pillars, which is being. Okay, so and this is quite masculine and feminine energy, so the yin, the yang. Because when I talk about masculine and feminine energy, I'm talking about the masculine is the being energy, sorry, the doing energy, and the feminine is the being energy. So they're not gender specific, but more around energy spheres. And so their 5 pillars are being, thinking, relating, collaborating, and acting. So you've got these different pillars. And within that, it sort of talks about caring for others, social skills, cognitive skills, enabling change, relationship to self and others. It's kind of like a model that not everyone is familiar with, but I aim to use that in some of my work. And in parallel, then, there's another model called Theory U by Otto Scharmer. And that Theory U is simply what you've just described in very simple terms about that co-relationship. So there's 5 phases of Theory U, which is all about individuals and groups doing co-initiating, co-sensing, co-presenting, co-creating, and co-evolving. And I believe that there is something in these 2 particular models, what you've just spoken about and brought together in your book, is bringing this kind of very, I wouldn't say that everybody has to agree on every single thing, but they have to kind of be on and okay with the idea that there is this goal or this way or this approach. They have to be a part of it in some way. It doesn't have to be perfection, and they don't have to agree with 100% of it, but it's got to be okay enough. And that's what the phases of Theory U represent to me, is getting everybody in a place where they can see and feel this change, and it's ecological. It's being all included. Now, that's not an easy thing to achieve, because we know that inclusion, not everyone evolves at the same time, not everyone processes at the same speed. But these 2 things, I think, are really helpful in understanding a non-traditional change. You know, if you look at Lewin, you unfreeze, change, freeze. Well, I think we need to be unfrozen all the time. I think that's the point, is that we can't be in a place now where we are locking in something, and that's where the change fatigue is happening. We need to be change ready all the time. Bearing in mind that we are aging every day. We are changing every day as humans. We are not locked into one age to, we're evolving every day, and so is nature. So it's innate in us to change, but we've been sold a system and conditioned to think that, this is the process that you must adopt and adhere to. And that will look different to people, because we're born into different structures, different societies, different places, different cultures, different norms, all of that stuff. And I kind of feel like your book brings together a lot of the things that I've just, in my world, what I know about, it brings together and makes it in a storytelling construct, so it's easier to resonate with the story about how people are wading themselves through this period of change, what they do, what they don't do, how they evolve. I think is really good, and I would really love to be able to support people knowing more about it, because this is a lifetime of knowledge and information brought in a very easy way. I don't think that we have an attention span anymore that's particularly wide and deep. But are you on Audible? Or actually, you don't even need to be on Audible these days. Have you ever heard of Speechify?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh my God. So anybody and it's a new thing for me, and it's not a new thing, it's a new thing to me. So Speechify, you can upload any book, any article, anything, and it reads it to you.
I have heard of it, actually.
it's brilliant. And so you can choose your voices, of course, but it is fantastic because it means that any book is now available in. I have high ADHD. Sometimes reading is a real challenge for me, so I need to listen and read at the same time to be able to retain the information. I find it brilliant. So I can upload anything at all, and have it speak to me. So I could be doing something else and listen to like a podcast. It's just brilliant. So I think anybody that struggles with that might want to take that on board. But anyway, it
So,
sounds like a lot of your wisdom and skill has come into this book. What's your reflection now you've written that book and birthed it to the world? What was your feeling?
look, I'd like to update it a little bit because I've learned other things since as well. But when I looked at it, I thought, well, what I guess liked with it was it was a story that people could relate to because it plays out in boardrooms and in sort of management meetings, etc., etc. But I guess it was completely different than what I started with in terms of what I intended to do. And it's not a how-to book. It's if you thought of it this way, what would you then do to maybe make this happen? To get greater understanding, for instance, of your culture. How do you know your culture is adaptive, for instance? That's a big question for me. And you don't do that with, do you like your job, or have you got a best friend at work kind of Gallup question. You get it from other things. But I'm also, within the book, I was able to be able to put in a couple of things. You talked about your soapbox, but a couple of things that I suggest, for instance, a new type of leadership is needed going forward into the future. Because one of the things we're dealing with is a workforce who lack resilience. And the reason, a lot of the reasons for that is that we've protected people for some time from mental stress, and for me it's a little like, to get physically fit you go and exercise and you put yourself through a bit of pain and whatever, but we're not willing to do that. We try to protect our kids and younger people at work and whatnot so that they avoid some mental stress, but they can only build resilience from actually undergoing a little bit of mental stress. So a new form of leadership to enable people to be able to deal with the pace of change, as you've said. We've got to be always unfrozen. So I like that. We need leaders who can put people into situations and not guide them through it, but watch them through it, make them experience it. I mean, I use sport as an analogy within the book as well. It's very big in New Zealand culture, but you can't understand what it's like to be a goalkeeper unless you've made a save or let a goal in. Or you can't understand what it's like to be in a scrum unless you've been in it and somebody stomped on you. Really, you can't unless you've been in the arena. So we need to create a new type of leadership. I call it cultivating leadership, which it's built on the Goldman model, if you like. So there's all of these different types, affiliative and whatever. But this new cultivating one is more like a parent or a grandparent, to be honest. And we've known this for a long time, but it's actually doing it and saying, well, look, I'm not going to do this for you. You're going to do it. And we'll have a conversation afterwards, or whatever. But, so I've got this thing that we can solve, I think, a lot of our leadership issues by creating a work environment in which people learn to be a little bit more mentally resilient, as well as just doing the job. And currently, we do everything we can to help them avoid building resilience. So it's kind of, that's the key thing for me, is I managed to get that message through. That actually polarized a lot of people who have read the book. They've come to me saying, I disagree with you. But I used facts and data. And for instance, a survey done in Australia recently suggested that it was something like 75% of people over the age of 35, or between the age of 35 and 50, won't change a light bulb. They'll hire somebody to come and do it because they're frightened of what might happen if they climb a ladder. They'll get their parents or grandparents to do it for them. Don't mind killing the old granddad. But, it's like, what happened? How do we get to this? You know, I do all sorts of things myself, but I was brought up in that environment and learned, which is a mental strengthening. So it has polarized people. It's got people talking, and that's what's important for me. I do have people who are disagreeing with me. That's brilliant. We've got a debate going.
I agree. We need to. So one of the things that you've highlighted to me is that we shouldn't be afraid of conflict or challenge. We need to do it really well. And I think that that is a part of leadership now, is that we don't need to avoid it. We actually need to embrace it, but do it really well.
I think we need to create it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because without friction and tension, things don't get challenged or questioned. It's lots of people, you know, would not want confrontation. They do anything to avoid it. And I say, it's one thing to have a blazing row and, you know, go head to head and be quite personal and damaging. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the reverse of that, which is having a really intelligent conversation about, oh, that is different, and I hadn't really thought about that. This is my point of view. I don't necessarily agree with you, but why am I not agreeing with you? What does that mean? How maybe my perspective is narrow, or maybe I've experienced something which is, we are biased, we are full of bias, and we shouldn't be hiding behind that, saying that's a problem. We've only got biases because of our lived experiences, because of our conditioning, because of what we've experienced in life. So they are all valid points. They may not converge into one viewpoint, nor should they. I think that is what makes us human. That's what I know. That's the thing for me, is that to debate and to really have challenge is such a great thing. I don't want to be agreed with all the time. That's boring.
Well, no, sometimes I would like to be agreed with all the time. You know,
well, it depends, Terry, on the subject, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it sounds like your book is an amazing journey and story for not only you to write about, but for others to receive that. Because again, talking from a lifetime of experience that's grounded in what you've seen, what you've felt, what you've heard, is, you know, has a lot of weight. I think everybody's got some kind of story in them, whatever it's about.
so do I.
Everybody, and it's very cathartic also and therapeutic to write out and get expressed in your way, in your tone, in the way that suits you. I think that is a very I think that's a great process for people to go, even if they never publish, just to be able to write about something, and actually cognitively that helps us to process information and to make sense of the world. So I really say to every author, congratulations. It's a really big deal to get that far, to even write it, let alone publish it. So bravo and accolade you for that. I want to read it. Like, I've got a full day today, and I'm like, there's a part of me that says, no, I want to go and read this.
Well, look, I would love your feedback. I really would, because to be honest, people who have read it, particularly New Zealanders, we're a little like Canadians. We will probably tell people what we think they want to hear, rather than, no, it was crap, it was rubbish. And I don't mind that, because then I can then do another version or another version, and continuous improvement sort of thinking. But most of the people who have read it have said it was unique. I haven't read a book like that because, and I don't want to sell or anything, but for me, I really have only my own concept of what it looks like. What's important is whether the reader likes it, not whether the writer likes it. That for me is the key thing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally concur. There's many similarities in the way that I can see our thoughts and how we arrive at certain, I guess, points or roads or decisions. Yeah, I can sense that and feel that. I've loved our conversation. I'm just checking my time. So we've got it's glorious sunshine here now. It's like amazing. I can't see my screen, but I'm not going to turn any curtains. I'm not going to close curtains because we don't get enough of this to worry about it. But Terry, this has been so fantastic, and I think that there's room for more discussion in the future. because I really feel that once I've read the book, I'm going to want to now go into rabbit holes and explore that and talk about it. So would you be willing to do that?
Oh, yeah, look, I'd love to. And, we've got a couple of little Westie dogs here, which are very good at going down rabbit holes, so I'll bring them in and they can help me.
Brilliant. I love that. I absolutely love that. Well, we've come to the end of our episode today, and I hope that you have enjoyed being here, Terry, as much as people have enjoyed listening to ZED Talks. This is unfiltered, unscripted. We don't edit anything. It's as it is, as you are, because that's what makes us beautifully human. So we'd love your feedback. You can connect with Terry through the links in the description and invest in the triple knot. You're going to learn a lot, it seems, from somebody that's been right in the firing line, quite literally. And I think that there's a lot we can learn from you. So thank you so, so much. Enjoy that lovely glass or 2 glasses of wine or 3, however many you're having in New Zealand. And thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Zoe. It's been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to catching up again sometime.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. I'm just going to stop the recording and I'll see you before you go. So for anyone listening, bye for now. We'll see you next time.